So hey there, GRRR travelers, thanks for joining me again. Welcome back. Today I thought I'd go ahead and follow up with my last video, continue on to showing you how I go ahead to plan my trip, how I go about trip planning my layovers. I know I mentioned that in my previous video, and I kind of like saved this video to kind of like flesh it out just a little bit more. Now I have roughly 9 to 10 days on this trip with a 22-hour layover in Shanghai. The 22-hour layover is the one place where I'm gonna have a lot of wiggle room and I have to figure things out, how to do things very quickly and get around quickly and efficiently so I can make the most use of my time. I'm gonna have to book a hotel. I'm gonna need to understand airport information and what's available to me and resources, as well as figure out things to do. So that's kind of like that meat and bones that I told you about. That's gonna be here. It's gonna be condensed and tight. It's gonna be quick. If I didn't suffer it here, I'm gonna suffer it there. And I am trip planning for an actual destination. My main concerns are gonna be hotel, transportation, airport. These are the 3 things that I need to know also if I'm gonna do a layover that's anything longer than 5 hours. Again, the itinerary of things to do is going to be the last thing that I really research. And the reason why I always make it the last thing to research is because I know that that's kind of like the filler. If I have time, I will be able to research it, and maybe I'll do kind of like a quick list of top highlights to visit or foods to eat. But the thing is, I know that if that falls through and I don't have enough time, I can always ask tourism information desks at the airport or concierges at hotels, locals, you know, like planning what to do can be done quickly and even with a guidebook. Because I always like to milk my layovers and create an extra day trip out of it if I can. One of my favorite sites to go to is sleepinginairports.net, and I've mentioned them before in my layover videos that I've done, which are there. If I've built in a layover into my trip, then one of my favorite sites to go to, my must, sleepinginairports.net. And that's because they have a nice breakdown of airports, things that you want to look at and are going to be important to you if you feel like you're going to stay in an airport anywhere from 3 hours to more. This is the Shanghai Pudong Airport. Yes, I will want to know what lounges are available. Airport Wi-Fi and internet access, that's important to me. I want to know if I get it. I want to know if I get it free or if I have to pay for it or if it's just not available, period. If I'm going to book a hotel, then I want to know what's nearby, and it's helpful in doing a quick breakdown. You're going to want to hit up the information desk to see what's available in terms of sightseeing. Another big one that I like to know is luggage storage and lockers. I want to know if I can store my luggage there, because if I can, then that means I can hop around the city baggage free. Generally the hours are good to know. I like to know if I can leave my luggage overnight, if I have an overnight layover. If I do, then that means I can sleep in the airport. If they don't have an overnight luggage facility, then that means I'm carrying my luggage with me or I'm getting a hotel. Mobile charging is also good to know. Airport hours, definitely important to know. Some airports, if they're smaller airports, domestic airports, they may not be 24 hours. If they're not 24 hours, that means you need to find a hotel or accommodations outside of that airport. And that's happened to me in Fukuoka Airport, where they weren't 24 hours, which meant during the evening I had to go out and find accommodations for myself. And that ended up in a manga cafe for around $11. And it was just basically like an internet cafe, but it was a very interesting one. Things like that you want to know. You want to know if you can sleep in the airport. That's another thing. And this site actually helps that, because people leave reviews about where was the best place to sleep in the airport, or whether or not, you know, they constantly got woken up and had to move around to different places because it got policed or whatnot. I also want to know what my transportation options are getting from the airport to the city. This site is just very helpful in breaking down a layover and what your amenities are if you want to stay in the airport or if you want to venture out. Oh, I was all ready to hit publish on this video, and then I realized while I was running one hugely important thing: connecting flights and transfers. Now, if you have a layover, obviously you have a connecting flight. You're going from one destination to another and you're hanging out in between. This is the tricky part of doing layovers and connecting flights when you're flying, especially internationally. Sometimes with certain cities and countries, there are two airports: an international airport, as well as kind of like a domestic budget carrier slash domestic international terminal. So you might come across two terminals. Unfortunately, when you look at your flight itinerary, it might not show that you're flying out of a different terminal. And a lot of them don't show what gate numbers you're coming into and flying out of. You don't find out what gate you're flying into until the stewardess announces it over the loudspeaker when you arrive. If you are coming internationally to one location, one city, and you're going to be transferring or connecting your flight to fly out to another city that's in the same country, that's going to be like a domestic flight right there. There's a strong chance that the airport terminal that you need to connect to might be a domestic terminal that might be located outside of the international one. For me, I'm flying from Shanghai to Qinghai, which is like still in mainland China. I'm probably going to be flying out of a domestic airport. That's the probability that I'm foreseeing right now. Sometimes they're like connected together. Sometimes they're further apart and you need to shuttle it or take a taxi or take a, like their express rail or airport rail. It's a mind juggle. That means that you will be exiting through immigration. You'll be doing all that humma-jabugga. When you finally get to this airport, you'd be like checking in luggage, going up to immigration and visa, passport control, all that stuff, until you find your terminal there. That's a lot of time in between. 3 hours is a good kind of guesstimate of how long it might take. Off the top of my head, I know what's like thrown me off: Chicago, O'Hare, Seoul, Bangkok, Shanghai. So far, these are my 4 biggies, but I'm sure there are more airports out there. The things to look out for are when you look at your itinerary to see if your airline's carrier has kind of like under it operated by another airline. Say I book a flight and it's all through United Airlines. If I look underneath in the fine print, it might say operated by Singapore Airlines during one of my other connections. So from the States, I might be flying United, but when I transfer, I'm gonna have to transfer to Singapore Air. That's like operated by, that means they defer to this airlines, and that's the airline's, the partner that's gonna take over that connecting flight. Could be 2 different terminals, could be 2 different airports. And it also depends on whether or not I'm flying domestically. Sorry, I'm just sweating. So that's one thing. You have to be aware of the different airline carriers that you're going to be flying through. So what I like to do is I always like to pad at the very least, 3 hours between connecting flights. And that's because I don't know where the connection, so I'm going to be like wiping myself down because I'm still sweating from that run and I just showered. So that's something to be aware of, is that you might have 2 airport terminals. They could be close together, they could be far apart. You don't know, you could be running to that next location. That other terminal could be like half an hour away. Sometimes I'm on my flight and I'm already, with my magazine, their airline magazine, and I'm kind of like flipping to the back of the gates so I can check the airport layouts and figure out like how expansive everything is and whether or not I might potentially need to take a shuttle or a taxi or whatever. I know there's like a gate app. Kind of like, I forgot if it's like Gates. I know there's like a mobile app. Yeah, it's not. I know there's an app out there. Hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, give me a thumbs up or a like. Subscribe to my channel. And yes, if you know of any airports which have thrown you off, which have tricked you out in terms of offering another terminal that you had to run to at the last minute, or like gates far away, or 2 different airport terminals, then please leave them down in the comment section below so you can give us a heads up on those places to be aware of. I already have 2 videos on layovers, and they're more about like surviving a layover as well as how to I guess choose your layover too, because that's juicy stuff. I didn't really include it into this. This video covers some of that video that I did on choosing your layover. But yeah, that other one will kind of show you like the features that you should be aware of, that you can work with to make your layover a more enjoyable one and interesting one. Until then, travel safe, smart, and fun. I will see you next in China. May the grrr be with you.